Hey everybody, I wanted to talk about the next part of this Temple and Man. We're going to take a look at the Church of the Gesu and some of the sacred geometry inside of it a little bit today. First I wanted to start off though with something from Orion de Lubic's The Temple and Man here that you see, where he discovered the temple in Luxor in Egypt, as I've described before, actually is the layout of the human body. When you go into these various rooms and take a look at the hieroglyphs, they're actually associated to those areas of the body. And we actually see this carried over into the Christian cathedrals as well, some of the early Greek cathedrals. But I wanted to start out on page 31 here, a mention of something. And it says here, the parallel between an Egyptian temple and our cathedrals was not suggested solely by the search for the same conception in the symbolism of the ground plan. H. Schaeffer believed that he had found in the Temple of Luxor the origin of the canon of the plan of the Greek basilica and its derivatives. Well, this is some of the same thing that I've shown you inside of the St. Peter's Basilica, for example. That the basilica is actually laid out the same as the human body. We know this because we can take a look at the ratios, the phi ratios, and we can see where the actual head is of the temple. And this has also been backed by Knights Templars as well, that mentioned that Gnostics have gone in and designed these temples this way. And there was actually some very esoteric information stored in these temples when they did this. They mentioned that they don't know how they got away with it, but they actually did. And so we're going to take a look at some sacred geometry behind the Church of the Gesu today. Before I get started, I want to put a thank you out to a couple of my friends. You know who you are. They are passing some of the sacred geometry that I'm doing around some of the Masonic lodges. And so my work is starting to get passed around inside of those areas, and it's helping them with the sacred geometry, and they're really happy with that. They're actually happy to see people out here doing that kind of thing, and I'm actually happy to know that they're actually sharing this information out there. I've got a lot of friends who are Masons, and along with that, I just wanted to share with everybody that sometime next year, probably the beginning of next year, I'll probably join in the Freemasons. And I'm looking forward to that because there's a lot of people in there that share the same kind of information and are interested in the same kind of thing that I am. And it just seems like a really good fit for me. So once again, I wanted to put a thank you out for that. And I'll keep you guys posted and updated on my status. I've got several people that are already willing to vouch for me, so shouldn't be that big of a deal getting in. This bone right here is where the sacrum starts, and it moves up into the head area that we see right here. So when we take a look, for example, at the Church of the Gesu, this area that you see right here with these two red things, this is what's called the porch. So when you overlay these on top of each other and you overlay enough of them, you begin to see, where the porch area is on all of these and where the high altar is on all of these, and it begins to become very obvious when you start seeing enough of these on top of each other how the geometry and the architecture actually works. So without crowding that too much, we're going to take a look at the Church of the Gesu here next. And one thing I want to point out for you guys is we're going to take a look at a little bit of sacred geometry. And one thing I want to point out about sacred geometry is a lot of misconception going on around this. I don't know. It's a lot of these people that are just putting out fear. It's unnecessary. Unfortunately, since I'm making these videos public to everyone, I think it's just a good idea just to put this kind of information out. There's some people out there that are claiming that sacred geometry is something that is evil and shouldn't be in churches, and this normally comes from these Christian fear people that believe everything is evil. But when you go and show them things like this, they really don't have anything to say, because sacred geometry, the flower of life, for example, can be found in nature all over the place. And if you take a look at cell mitosis, for example, we can see that the exact thing that we see in the flower of life is found in cell mitosis. So we're taking a look at something that is found all over nature. This is the way the older cathedrals were designed. They were designed with a lot of sacred geometry in mind, and it's actually a good experience, and it's good for people to go in and experience these kinds of things because the architecture is so beautiful. It's not like what we see today that's all boxy. And it actually works and helps your spirit when you go into places that are designed like this with sacred geometry in mind. Another place that we can view sacred geometry is contained, it's very easy to see, is in the human body and the human structure itself. And of course, if we take a look at the human skull here, for example, it's really easy to see where we use the circles that fill the eye sockets here, and it creates a natural geometry for the nose area. We can see that the jawline follows along with everything on the skull that you see here, the cheekbones and the lines coming up to be the cheekbones and everything. Some skeptics will tell you can fit any geometry you want on top of this, and that is simply not true at all. The sacred geometry, the flower of life, the same flower of life that we see in Egypt in the Assyrian temple, and a more complex version of it gives us an understanding of what they were trying to teach us. It's a very esoteric teaching, and the reason that the sacred geometry works so well with the human body is because everything works after this pattern. And so naturally it makes sense that if you're designing temples after man, that you're going to use sacred geometry. Here is another quote from Orion de Lubitsch's The Temple in Man. In Egypt, in India, as well as later in the Christian cathedrals of the Gothic period, the temple was a book revealing an esoteric teaching. Now, considering his book is called The Temple in Man, what do you think that esoteric teaching is? The teaching is that in these various cathedrals, they are showing the same thing. They're showing the temple in man. What we are interested in specifically in this is not just to show the temple in man, but also to show what they were pointing to in the macrocosm. And the macrocosm version of what they're showing us, dating all the way back to the ancients that we see in the winged disk, is pointing to the Orion Nebula, and that area is associated with the macrocosm, and it's associated with the head, or the brain area of the macrocosm. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a little bit of a review real quick, just to show you what we are dealing with, see the consistency, and then we're going to move on to the Church of the Gesu. So in these various cathedrals that we've shown so far, we've shown that they have been the outline of man, just like we see in ancient Egypt, just like we read in Orion de Lubitsch, just like we heard from the Knights Templar. And so if we take a look at some of these cathedrals, let's just review some of the ones we've looked at real quick. This one right here is the the Chapel of Versailles. As you can see right here, once again, we have the porch area, and right up here we have the high altar. So if we flip on over to here, our Church of Versailles, we have the Orion Nebula being displayed in the head. This is the same thing that we see all the way back into ancient times. Just as I've shown you, the winged disk, which sits above the tree of life in the Assyrian tree, is also the same as the Orion Nebula. It's a version showing us the macrocosm. There's the macrocosm, and then there's the microcosm, which is man. This is the way the ancients believed. And so just like the Kabbalah tree of life, the Assyrian tree of life was showing us the same thing. This is also something that was addressed and confirmed inside the Journal of Near Eastern Studies with Chicago Press, or Chicago University Press as well, that I presented in my recent video. So what you see right here is a version of the macrocosm showing the Orion Nebula inside the head area, which is associated with the high altar. You have three main areas that you look at. This crescent moon thing is found in most all of these altars that are displaying the Orion Nebula. So you see that right here, and I've colored it in right here for you as well. The next part that you see is this guy right up here, and he reaches his arm out. It almost looks like a cloud, and that's the same as what you see right here. And then the third one that's sometimes displayed, most of the time it's actually displayed, sometimes it's not, is this guy right here. So the next one that we'll take a look at, this is called Karlskirche, and it's located in Vienna, Austria. And this is the other one that has the Temple of Man. And this is the first one that I found the Orion Nebula inside, but I had not connected a long time ago many things other than the fact that I had found the Orion Nebula in this altar. This is where the altar is located, and if we come over to what we see here, that is the same as what we see right here. So your same crescent moon shape that you see right here circled in turquoise is what you see right here. Here's a close-up version of it. And then you have this other turquoise box right here displaying this guy with his arm reaching out. Notice that it's consistent with the last image that we saw. The same two images that we see, their placement and everything is in the same location. Here is another version of the same altar where we see the crescent moon shape here. We see it right here as well. And then we see this guy right here with his arm reaching out. You can see that the same things are being displayed. And right here, you have Yahweh with the area of crucifixion, which is the pineal gland. This is the macrocosm version of this. So if we flip back over to our cathedrals, let me see what we have next here. Oh yeah, we have St. Peter's Basilica. We want to show that one. And so St. Peter's Basilica, just like mentioned, these Greek basilicas that were mentioned inside Ari Schwoller de Lübeck's Temple of Man are laid out just like what we see in ancient Egypt. So when we take a look at the Temple of Man, this is exactly the way it's laid out. Here's your porch area again. This area right here is your high altar. And then once again, if we want to take a look at that information, we can take a look at St. Peter's Basilica and we'll see the same information. Here's just an image of the Orion Nebula here on the left. And then on the right we have the same imagery and they're all placed in the same locations. We have our crescent moon shape right here sticking out just like it sticks out right here. It sticks out right here. And we have our guy with his arm reaching out right here, same as this guy right here. And the same locations, if you'll notice, is what we see. This guy right here and this guy right here. And then this guy is a lot of times shown right here reaching out into the bottom third. So we have this guy, and this guy. In some of them, like the Church of St. Mary, we see an additional one right up here, which is the top one. But these two guys are always located in every single one of them. And then we have Spirit. This bird, which is the dove of peace, can be traced back to the winged disc as well. So here's our little history of what we've seen so far, and we can see the consistency shown inside this. There's the Chapel of Versailles again. And then here's an image showing all of them here. Here's the Chapel of Versailles. Here's the Orion Nebula showing the same imagery. Here's the Church of St. Mary, and the top part of it that I was showing you as well is right up here. Here's Karlskirch, and here's a painting showing the same crescent moon, the same guy up here. This is located inside Ossenkirch. So in all these locations we have the same thing. We have clouds surrounding a triangle. That same triangle that they're surrounding is the same triangle that you see when you look at the visual spectrum in the Orion Nebula. And what we see here is we see these crescent moon on the left side, and we see it in all of these images, and then we see this guy on the right side in all of these images. So we have that consistency there, and it's also tied to the Orion Nebula. So if you recall, when we take a look at the Assyrian Tree of Life, for example, the winged disc being at the very top, when we take a look at the Tree of Life, the Tree of Life associated to it, just like we saw from the Journal of Near Eastern Studies, Kether in this particular location is located in the area associated with the winged disc. The winged disc is associated with the Orion Nebula. Now, if we flip over here and take a look at a book by William G. Gray written in 1975, we read the following when it comes to Kether. Chapter 13, Sephira, Kether, the crown, the summit, Asiya, world of expression, primum mobile, nebula. It says the treetop at last. Here we are at the very apex of the middle pillar, where we can make no further progress on the tree of life unless we leave it altogether into nothing above or fall back to Malkuth and start all over again. Unless we have grown wings during our upward journey, we can only follow the latter course. Kether not only signifies a crown in the regal sense, but also the summit of any height, especially a mountain or a pillar. It has been implied the meaning surrounding anything a friendly manner. A proverb says, "The prudent put on the knowledge of doth as a crown." This gives a nice picture of the supernals together, with the crown of Kether ornamenting the prudent heads, Hokmah Bina, that have reached a position of knowledge at Doth. And then it says some modern Kabbalists have made the attribution of Uranus to Kether, although this can scarcely be a really ideal one. And that's true because the Nebula, and if we take a look at any of the alchemical art, all the old alchemical art finishes at Saturn and then moves beyond Saturn to what is called the fixed stars, and then beyond that we have Kether, the mysterious area, which actually turns out to be the Orion Nebula, located in Orion, which is associated with Osiris. And what we see right here in Michelangelo's painting of the brain with the Gray's Anatomy laid on top of it, we can see that he's painted the same thing, a brain in right profile, which is also what we read about in Kabbalah in the Book of Concealed Mystery. So this area represents Kether, represents the winged disk, and that's why when we look at it in the infrared spectrum, we see this area right here, which is the triangle in the visual spectrum. We see it as a winged disk. Here's an alchemical drawing by Athanasius Kircher, and you can see that all the planets are listed here all the way up to Saturn, and beyond Saturn you have the fixed stars, and beyond that you have, of course, Yahweh in the cloud, which is associated to the Orion Nebula. So this shows that Saturn is really the last planet when we're taking a look at the macrocosm until we get to the fixed stars. Here's another one by Athanasius Kircher, and as you can see, the planets from Earth to the Moon, to Mercury, to Venus, to the Sun, to Mars, to Jupiter, Saturn, then again we have the fixed stars, and then we have the central invisible sun, which is the triangle with the eye inside of it, and once again that is associated to the Orion Nebula, just like we read in Kabbalah from Ladder of Lights. So you can see that in all of these cases, when we take a look at the tree of life, like here, it moves up in this fashion: the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. This area refers to the fixed stars, and then we have Kether, which refers to the nebula. Okay, so I know you're ready to take a look at the Church of the Gesu and the sacred geometry, so we're going to go ahead and move on to that real quick. Here's the layout, and here's the human body on top of it. When we first walk in through the porch, what we're going to see is the area of the nave, and that's going to be on the high ceiling. And then as we approach, we're going to approach the head. So I have a picture of the inside of the church for you. So as soon as we walk in, this is what we see. This dome area that you see right here, this area, that is associated to what we see right here. And if we zoom in on that, that is actually a picture of the Orion Nebula trapezium, which we'll go over in here in a little bit. That's associated with the head. When we first walk in and we look up, we see this particular image right here, and that's what we're going to take a look at first. Something to note here: when we first walk into the church, this is displayed first. So what we see is we kind of see the whole Orion constellation from a distance. But as you approach the head of the church up here, you get a close-up of the Orion Nebula trapezium. So from here you get it as a distance, like you're looking at it from afar, the whole Orion constellation, and when you get up here, you get the actual close-up of it, which makes sense if you're walking inside the church, to view it from a distance first, and then to view it close-up next. Now, something interesting to note about the Church of the Gesu, which is what we're looking at right here, is that its history. Because it says, although Michelangelo, at the request of the Spanish cardinal, Bartolomeo de La Cueva, offered out of devotion to design the church for free, the endeavor was funded by Cardinal Alessandro Farnese, grandson of Pope Paul III. Michelangelo ended up dying before he was able to do anything, and of course Bernini actually assisted in this. So when we take a look at this image right here, which I found a very high resolution image for, this particular fresco was designed by Giovanni Battista Galli, who at 22 years old was an apprentice to Bernini. So Bernini kind of picked up where Michelangelo left off. And you guys are familiar with Michelangelo and what he painted in the Sistine Chapel. So there seems to be some kind of a handoff going on here between the masters. And so what we see right here is a painting or a fresco called Triumph of the Name of Jesus. And when we get a little bit closer to this thing, we see that there's a logo right here that has the monogram, the Christogram. It's called IHS. And a lot of people are confused what that means, but we can take a look real quick. It is a monogram being a symbol of Jesus Christ in the form of an acronym. Same here. It's a combination of letters that forms an abbreviation for the name of Jesus Christ. So what this IHS monogram refers to, it refers to the holy name of Jesus. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to determine exactly what it is that we're looking at when we look at this fresco. And that's going to be covered in part 2, so stick around.